It's time now for the week that was. Let's take a look at the top stories that made headlines around the globe this week. And we're starting here in Nigeria, where Nigeria's gross domestic product has been rebased to 205 trillion naira. This was disclosed by the Statistician General of the Federation, Adeyemi Adeniro, during this week's official unveiling of the new GDP figures in Abuja.
Speaking about the GDP rebasing, I think that this is something that was very, very important. If at all we're looking at this situation realistically, does it in any way make Nigerians richer? Maybe on paper it does. It makes us understand that, listen, we're not just about the oil and gas. There are other sectors within Nigeria's economy that are actually thriving and doing very well. The creative space, for instance, ICT, tech, agriculture. If anything, it also reminds us of the fact that this is a further indictment on the government to say that, listen, a lot of these private sectors are doing very, very well. Why is it not translating to more jobs? Why is it not translating to reduced inflation? Why is it not translating to an increased standard of living? While we're very happy to see that a lot of people are doing well in these sectors, you know, concerts are thriving, Nollywood is thriving, streaming is thriving, fintech is thriving. You know, you see the likes of OPay, PayPal and the likes. The fact still remains that Nigerians need a better standard of living. Nigerians need to thrive along with these sectors. These individual sectors thriving, that's translating to now what we are seeing in our GDP needs to affect the common man. Where are we repurposing our taxes to, our fiscal policies? How does it affect the average Nigerian? I think in the entire conversation around GDP rebasing and how important it is and how it highlights other sectors in the economy, we also need to remember that in as much as this is what we are generating as an economy, the people still need a better life. And I think that's important to take note of.
All right, absolutely. You're very right, Kachi. Questions need to be asked when it comes to rebasing the economy. The last time it was done before now was in 2014, when Nigeria became, you know, the biggest economy in Africa. Sadly, yes, we have grown this time around, capturing many aspects of Nigeria's economic, like you mentioned. But the sad part of it is that in spite of the growth, it's confirmed that we're no longer the biggest economy in Africa. And not only are we not the biggest, we're about the fifth, isn't it?
I think fourth.
Sorry?
I think we're the fourth now.
The fourth now, okay. Yes. Behind South Africa, behind Egypt, yes. And who else? Is it Algeria or Angola, yes, or somewhere? I think Algeria. It is our reality and we need to confront it. What should be concerning is that all these other countries that we are contending with have fewer population than Nigeria.
And we do.
You know, than Nigeria. We're like 3 times bigger in terms of population than South Africa, which is Africa's biggest economy. It means that the more money they have less people to cater to their needs. We're almost like twice the size, if not more, of Egypt. Egypt is Africa's second biggest economy. You know, these indicators are necessary so that when we speak of progress, let's bring that progress home, like Kachi asked. How is it telling on the average Nigerian in terms of per capita income to GDP? And so, at the end of the day, the rebasing has come. A few progress recorded in few areas, but then at the end of the day, we're still basically where we are. You know, not the giant that we thought we will be.
Yes, giants of Africa in the mud, as I like to say. You know, our oil and gas sector has always contributed a small part to our GDP, which is sometimes really confusing for people to understand because it does contribute a lot of our foreign exchange. But however, in terms of GDP, it contributes a lot. Industry as a whole only contributes around 21% of our GDP after the rebasing. In a developing economy like Nigeria, that should really be more like 25 to 35%. When we're looking at these figures also, our president, of course, is tracing a $1 trillion economy. Now, before the devaluation of the Naira, these GDP figures we're seeing would have given us an economy that was about $840 billion. But with this current exchange rate, with the Naira right now, we're seeing a GDP and an economy that is around $250 billion. That's a quarter of the way of where President Tinubu wants to get before 2030. Of course, his Minister ministers have been saying destination 2030, we're going to get to 1 trillion for 2030. Now it's seemingly going to be quite difficult to get that, because if we do not have these structural changes in our industries, in our agricultural sector, in our energy sector, then we're not going to see our GDP increase in the way that we want it to. And you know, a lot of times, you know, we say giant of Africa, but it was important because also of our population side, as you rightly stated, GDP per capita in Nigeria is extremely low. Extremely low. And so, you know, I did watch an interview about 2 weeks ago where one of the president's aides was going at him by saying, "You're going off for fake numbers. Wait to recapitalize." Well, now we've recapitalized. Giants of Africa no more.
And it's also very concerning that Greek is contributing so little, you know, to the GDP. So little to the GDP. That should bother a lot of people. Because many of the developmental projects that we recorded in the 60s came through agriculture. All the cocoa house, you know, most of the things that Awolowo did, you know, what were the pyramids in the north at that time? The granite pyramids,
yes,
all came via agriculture. At the time, cocoa was giving us so much. We were, you know, together with Ghana, we could basically compete with anybody, you know, practically with anybody in Europe. But today, the reality is that we're not doing very well at all when it comes to agriculture. Yeah. That's sad.
And it's agriculture that really will lift people out of poverty, because we don't, and food security, because we don't have an industrialized economy where we're not manufacturing per se, we're not really producing. And so what we need to be producing really is agriculture. But
besides that, if you look at other sectors like, you know, the content creation, the tech services, you know, the digital services, I think what's also striking to me is the fact that a lot of the new pillars on which this rebasing was formed are sectors that we do not see as much government influence as we do see in oil and gas. So for instance, with the creative economy, of course, now we're just seeing that. But this is something that if you go back to 2019...
They were captured in 2014 too.
They were captured in 2014, but now they're captured even in a more broader spectrum, on a more broader spectrum.
And the service sector.
Exactly, the content creation sector, the streaming sector as well. Live concerts was captured. I was quite surprised.
You really love this sector, right? That's your sector.
Everybody knows I'm a creative economy person. Everyone who knows me knows that for a fact.
So am I.
You understand? No, I am. I feel like, yeah, but you do love your politics. But the point I'm trying to make is this, right? I think this is also like an honest to the government to say, okay, let's look into this sector. The other day we were talking about artificial intelligence. That was an interesting conversation that we had on artificial intelligence. I think a lot more knowledge still needs to be built on AI and how we can utilize this to build our economy. Let's look into some of these techies. Let's bring them in. As opposed to leaving them out, they're thriving on their own in their little bubbles. Well, big bubbles now, if I do say so myself. Let's bring them into the government and see how they can help us at this point in time with regards to making this reality for Nigerians. Because if inflation is still high, if salaries do not increase, if unemployment is still rampant, this really doesn't do much. This information, that is, doesn't do much for the average Nigerian's standard living. But now let's talk about what a typical average Nigerian standard of living looks like. Scores of retired police officers under the contributory pension scheme this week staged a protest at the Nigerian police headquarters in Abuja, demanding immediate removal from the pension arrangement, which they describe as exploitative and unjust. Buharis also demonstrated at the National Assembly before meeting with the Inspector General of Police. Arise News correspondent Ferdinand Duroha reports.
I'm regretting joining Nigeria. I'm in Nigeria, but I'm regretting joining Nigerian police. Look at those service members. They don't know what is going. See, the day that retirement date reach. Now they will know how we people that will retire 5 years now, they are passing through.
And many of them tired and sickly, but defied the odds as they stormed the Federal Capital Territory to protest poor pension earnings. Their first point of call is the National Assembly, from where they marched to the force headquarters. A major demand is to be exited from the contributory pension scheme and moved to a defined benefit scheme, similar to the Nigerian Military Pensions Board. They argue that this will foster transparency and diligence in police pension administration. They also lament that some pension companies are owing retirees for over 7 months.
The government should exit us from PENCOM. We don't want, because we have 2 bills in the National Assembly. Exemption from PENCOM and establishment of police pension board.
This issue of PENCOM, I look at it as a criminal that they form this PENCOM so that we, the junior one from the rank of constable to commissioner of police, they don't want to benefit anything. And every month they will give you 30-something thousand in a month. When you retire, you cannot see any, they can't give you money that you can even build a room.
Can you imagine 2 million naira after 35 years? What signal are you sending to the serving one? The serving one have known that at the end that 2 million they will pay them. So no one is ready to lay his life for the country, no more.
The pensioners are supported by members of the civil society organizations, with the Take It Back movement very prominent.
Those who are retired have given 35 years of active, in short, the best part of their lives, policing the country, giving their all, placing their lives on the line. And after retirement, what do they take home? 19,000 naira every month? This is so appalling.
The standoff goes on peacefully for hours, in the sun and in the rain, but not without drama. Refreshments provided by the police are rejected, while activist Omoyele Sowore alleged that he was harassed and his eyeglasses stolen by a police officer. 6 hours later, the pensioners concede and agree to a briefing by the Inspector General of Police at the Peacekeeping Hall. At the briefing, the IGP explains that he is not opposed to exiting the contributory pension scheme, but says it is beyond the powers of the IGP.
The IG didn't put the police in CPS. The agitation to exit the CPS has been on since 2014, 11 years ago. All previous IGs have tried their best to exit the police from the CPS. But exiting the CPS is beyond the power of any Inspector General of Police. There are a lot of things that are involved.
Lamenting their predicaments, some of them said they were approached to join Boko Haram, while many lamented that their inability to meet up with their responsibilities had led to failed marriages. They want the IGP to go to the presidency and solicit a special intervention for the police. While the group is not satisfied, they have promised to continue with the protest until their demands are met.
These are very, very serious issues. I think overall, it still borders on the welfare of the police officers. If it's not the exit from the contributory pension scheme, it is the salary, the wages that the Nigerian police get at the end of the day that is being protested. The fact is, if just thinking about the fact that this is a conversation that has been going all the way back to 2014, the Nigerian police needs better. I mean, recently, was it not part of the protest? Even Nigerians were not trying to protest for the better livelihood and the better standard of living for Nigerian police officers. So I feel like this is still, it's all encompassing. A lot of work needs to be done. My question now goes to, okay, this CPS though, where does that money even go to? If it's going into investments and the likes, what is being invested? Is the investment going back into the police sector, into the security, into the Nigerian police force exactly? Is it going into improving livelihoods of the people, creating some form of health fund, education fund, relief fund for these people and their children? What is, I don't know. I think it just boils down to the wealth of the Nigerian police. They do need help and they should definitely be treated better. The thought that somebody after a couple of years is earning 2 million naira, has 2 million naira just in their pension after serving this country, as tough as it might be, is completely appalling and heartbreaking, to say the least.
Indeed it is, and I think that it goes beyond just the question of welfare. I think that this, what has happened with the retired police officers, underscores the tragedy of some aspect of the Nigerian life, Nigerian life that affects, I believe, that more than 75% of Nigerians. If you're lucky to be within the 20%, maybe 25% fold of those who can get by with little stress and want, you probably won't appreciate what the majority of the people are going through. And I feel them because I have a personal experience. When my mom retired from, as a civilian from the Nigerian army about 20 years ago, I know what she went through. I know what we all went through. She retired in Ibadan. The processes that she had to go through in Ibadan, if you think that those were crazy, then think of what she went through when she had to go to Abuja, to queue for days. Many of them passed on the queue. Many of them will have to charter a vehicle. And I said, Mom, you can't go that way. I'll fly you. And she said, but every other person, they're going by road. Why will you have to fly me? Even when they get there, it was pure. And then at the end of the day, at that time, this gentleman said 2 million after 35 years in service. That was what she got 20 years ago. And then that's what they're still getting today with 37,000 that you now be getting every month. So what was the value of 2 million? As at that time, what I said to my mom, when it became like too, unbearable. And I said, Mom, how much are you expecting? He said about 2 million. And I said, don't bother. We, the children and everybody, we will give it. She said, lie. No, that she worked for it for 34 good years in service, and that she must collect it. No officer or no. And that's the feeling with many retirees. Even if it's 1 kobo, they want their money, as bad as it is. So 20 years after, this is what we are still facing. And we're talking about people who sacrifice their lives to protect other people. This is the treatment that they get. And it's so sad and shameful that the Inspector General, all he could do was to throw his arms up in the air and says, oh, we've been on it since 2014, and there's really nothing I can do. I think that it is shameful. I think that those who are able to do something should work on it, particularly the Inspector General of Police. If it requires going to the National Assembly or getting things done, get it done. Not to tell people that, oh, I'm sorry, there's really nothing I can do. That kills their spirit, that kills their soul. And 2 million that they were getting 20 years ago is still what they are getting. 2 million of that time is barely 200,000 now in value, in nominal value. And it's such a shame. It's sad.
Yes, as I honestly agree with you when you say that it is shameful and it is sad. Because, the first time that I saw truly dehumanizing conditions, living conditions, was when I went to police barracks. And when we think about our police welfare, not even just the pension, it's also how they live. How they are taken care of or not taken care of by those in charge. If you go to any police barracks today, you would see what I'm saying. There's even a building that was designated not fit for human habitation, and that's where our police were living, building that had burnt years before. And so when we think about police welfare, because this matters, it really matters. If you have poor relations with police and you wonder why they are so frustrated, this is why. This is why. Because police welfare is incredibly poor in Nigeria. And when you have that, that's what he said, that very importantly, that if they know what they're going to get after 35 years of work is 2 million naira, aren't you begging for corruption? Aren't you begging for misconduct? Aren't you begging? Because they're collecting a pittance as salary, and then they retire and they're collecting a pittance as their pension.
That's if they get it.
If they even get it at all. And because recently I also saw a video of servicemen, men in the Nigerian army, and they were showing their rations of what they were supposed to share between 5 men for 1 month. And it's heartbreaking, but it's also frightening. Because, as you said, these are the people who live their lives, laying their lives on the line for us to be safe and to be secure. And it is these men, the foot soldiers on the battlefield, the foot soldiers on the street, they're the ones who are getting the pittances. And when you look at how those who are in charge of them, how they move about town, how they move about life. I saw the IGP in a private jet.
I didn't realize that the police now have their own private.
Maybe he rented it.
The same for the force.
But even if we want to talk about that, it is not funny. It is very heartbreaking. These are the Nigerians who we should protect. And you look at how you go to America, you go to France, you go to England, you go to developed nations, you go to other places, you see how they take care, how they, veterans are the most protected class in America.
Absolutely.
And you come to Nigeria and you see what we're doing to our police, and who's going to stop them there? Who is brutalizing them as they're protesting? It's other police.
All right. Now to partisan political matters, where a former governor of Kano State and leader of New Nigeria People's Party, Rabiu Kwankwaso, on Thursday accused the government of President Bola Tinubu of sidelining northern Nigeria in federal development projects while concentrating resources in the southern part of the country. Speaking during the Kano State Stakeholders Dialogue on the 2025 Constitution Amendment, Kwankwaso criticized the government for what he called lopsided allocation of national budget, warning that the imbalance could deepen insecurity and poverty in the north. The former NNPC presidential candidate, who was declared fourth in the 2023 election, said that poor infrastructure in the north, especially roads, reflected years of underinvestment by successive governments, including the ruling All Progressives Congress. Now, Kwankwaso is speaking, and I think that it is important to listen to him for two reasons. One, it shows that it's not just one camp of the opposition that we are listening to. We know the PDP camp in disarray one way or the other. They're talking. We know of the coalition, and then the Labour Party, which is also struggling to get its act together. But then with Kwankwaso, one, NNPC as a component of the opposition party, opposition league, is speaking. And two, more importantly, in my view, this seems to be an indirect answer to those who think that he has been either bought or pocketed or is on his way to joining the APC. Because if you recall, when Ganduje was removed as the chairman of APC, the gist in town was that, this was preparatory to having Alhaji Kwankwaso into the APC fold, and that would strengthen the ruling party's foray into the core north. But here we have Kwankwaso speaking at the Constitutional Amendment, hearing and saying that no, the North is still unhappy. The North is not satisfied with what he calls the lopsided way in which resources are being allocated. Is it truly speaking for the North, or this is about, his own position towards 2027? It's up in the air, isn't it, Adeswa?
Well, we can say it's up in the air, and it's very interesting to finally hear from the Kwankwaso man himself. As you said, there's been a lot of conversation about is he moving to the APC, particularly considering that we have had multiple NNPP lawmakers move to the APC. A lot of people are porting to the APC now. In National Assembly, it's like every morning, first announcement is APC has a new member. But very importantly, because the presidency has responded. We saw Sunday Diary there respond. Correct. And a lot of people have been mocking the response, saying that we are talking about capital projects. You can't come and give us a list of 15 teaching universities and say we're doing something for the North. When last week I asked for an additional 47 million naira just for the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway. I said 47 million naira, I mean $47 million, And so if you're coming, yes, millions of dollars are going for the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway. And when we're talking about this lead up to 2027, particularly whether or not the president is popular in the North, it's clear that he is not. And we can see that he's consolidating his support in the South, consolidating his support with the Southern governors. But in the North, it seems that there is going to possibly be a challenge for President Tinubu. And, because one of the things that they brought up, I believe Sunday Diary brought up, was the Kano-Komeni highway. And it's like, if people are like, we haven't seen one tractor there, but you guys are showing us pictures of Lagos, Calabar, you're cutting ribbon down south. And these things are important. Even just the look of equity is very important in governance. It's not just giving prized positions to politically aligned people. It's making sure that the lives of the people at the bottom are felt. And yes, the president did say recently, he said that the governor should water the grass. He's doing his part. He's giving them these juicy FAC allocations. However, when people are seeing huge sums in the press, in the media, on National Assembly, going to projects that are mostly in the south, when people in the north are looking at trains in Lagos, they're not blaming their governors, unfortunately. They're blaming the president. And when you have this coming in the same week where the minister, Nyesom Wike, is said to be sizing up, gland for his family members, for his 90-year-old father in Guzape, in areas around Abuja in the north, I can't see, allegedly, you can't see how northerners would be very happy with what they're perceiving.
At the end of the day, there's been so much response to what he had to say. Of course, Ondidare coming out to try to balance the equation. Afenifere also coming out to even say, oh, okay, we hear you, but remember during Buhari's time and how there was a lot of development concentrated in the north as well. So why are you complaining? So we're also in a situation where now it's you did me, I do you, tit for tat. That's what it's starting to look like on the surface of these issues. Where we're heading into 2027, and we begin to highlight a lot more issues. How are they going to be responded to? Would they be responded on the basis of, well, you have no rights to complain because when it was this person in power, this is how it happened and this is what was done. When it was your turn, this is what you did. A lot of us spoke about the late President Muhammadu Buhari's legacy. And a lot of what was spoken about was how much work he did in the north. And that was what Afenifere hammered on to say. So, that time you did not really say much. So now, if that's the case, then what should the Southeast say? What should the Southeast people say then? Should they also come out with a leader to say, okay, we're also feeling marginalized? And I think this also speaks to, again, I always say this, it's important to frame what we need to say well, in such a way that it is not inciting, in such a way that it doesn't make people start to feel like they also need to have something to say. We're heading into a very, very critical time. We saw Kwankwaso come out in 2023. Will he be coming out again? Do we know if he will be? Is this also another way of also saying that this is something I've noticed and if I come in, I will do something better about it? At this point, everything that is said is suspect. But the fact still remains one thing. There's still so much insecurity in the north. There's still so much underdevelopment in the north. And these issues need to be catered to as well.
Definitely. Now, the governing All Progressives Congress is 3 senators short of 2/3 majority that would give it an absolute majority in the Nigerian Senate. This follows this week's defection of 4 more senators from the People's Democratic Party into its fold. This has further weakened the strength of the opposition in the Red Chamber. Arise correspondent Omar Bazwaye tells us more.
We can step forward and think about it.
Fresh waves of defection on Wednesday hit Nigeria's main opposition, the People's Democratic Party, PDP, after 4 senators announced their resignation from the party, pitching tent with a ruling All Progressive Congress, APC. An elated president of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, read out the defection letters, 2 of which were from his state, Akwa Ibom. First is Senator Aneka Basi from Akwa Ibom Northeast, and then Senator Ekong Samson from Akwa Ibom South. The defection of both men was long expected after the state governor, Umo Eno, led PDP members in the state.
I write with a deep sense of responsibility to inform the President of the Senate of my political realignment from the People's Democratic Party to the All Progressives Congress. This development has come after a range of consultations with my constituents, following the switch of even my state governor, Pastor Omoeno, to the APC, and the need to strengthen collaborations to develop my senatorial district and the larger Akwa Ibom state.
The defection of both Osun East and Olubi Ifedeyi of Osun Central, they hinged their decision on conflict within the PDP.
This decision has not been taken lightly, but I feel compelled to do so due to the unresolved internal crisis, various litigations and cases, and lack of leadership at the apex of the People's Democratic Party.
The Senate had relaxed its rules to enable APC National Secretary Bashiru Ajibola and other members of the party join in welcoming the defecting senators into their party, while the defection of all 4 PDP members further weakens the strength of the party and compounds the party's dwindling fortune. The party's loss, and by extension opposition in the Senate, is APC's gain. From 50 senators at inauguration in 2023, APC now has 70 members, just 3 short of securing two-thirds majority, that is, absolute majority. Senate leader Okwemi Bamidele welcomes the development, saying it's the beauty of democracy at work.
The APC, as a registered political party in the country, complying with that law, has left its doors open to all intending members and stakeholders in Nigeria who wish to join the party.
With the latest realignment, the number of PDP senators dropped to 28, followed by Labour Party with a distant 5 senators, SDP 2, ABGA 1, and NNPP 1, with 2 seats, Anambra South and Edo Central, currently vacant. Omo Bazwai, Arise News.
Well, in the meantime, President Bola Tinubu has called on state governors from his political party, the All Progressives Congress, to, in his words, wet the grass, which sounded like a marching order to them to increase their efforts towards addressing complaints from ordinary Nigerians at the grassroots. The president made this call during the party's 14th National Executive Committee meeting in Abuja on Thursday, where Minister of Humanitarian Affairs Nantawe Yowatda was elected the new national chairman of the APC. Now, very interestingly, before we go to the matter of the APC's new national chairman, of course, from the North Central, as everyone expected, I think we should go back to defections to the National Assembly. Because also in the reps, on the same day that we had 4 senators move to the APC, we also had 3 members of the reps move to the APC. Now, in the House of Reps, we had 2 from Osun State and 1 from Edo State. I believe now in Edo State, there's no more PDP rep member. And when we started this 10th Assembly in the House of Reps, the opposition actually had more members than the APC. I believe the opposition had 183 and the APC had about 182 or in the House. But now the opposition is down to less than 150. That is how significant the APC majority has grown in the House, as well as in the Senate. As Omar said, they've gotten about 20 senators, And we're also seeing this in a time where, some people are saying, is the PDP dead? Is it on life support? Because every time this happens, particularly in the House, you hear the defections in the morning, then the minority leader, Honorable Kingsley Chinda, will stand up and talk about the Constitution and talk about how there is no crisis in the PDP, which is possible. I think all the crisis in the PDP has left the PDP. I think they're calm now. But, you talk about there's no crisis in the PDP and these lawmakers should not be able to retain their seats after moving from one party to the other. But the chamber just basically laughs it off. Now, and before, we're having a conversation of Nigeria becoming a one-party state. Are people being put under undue pressure to join the ruling party? And the president said that he's happy that they're in disarray and, is it their fault that they're leaving a sinking ship? All of this as we head towards 2027. But I keep saying this ship is getting heavier and heavier, fuller and fuller as everyone is going to APC. I think the primaries are going to be very interesting, particularly for the members of the National Assembly.
I agree with you, but I think that, yes, the ship is getting fuller, but I don't think that is it's new, given the way that the Nigerian politics has always operated. And we have said it on this program several times that the game that APC is playing is a game that PDP had once played when it comes to creating a behemoth. 23 governors, still counting, as the president says, but then that's still like 4 governors short of what PDP had at the time, 4 or 5 governors short at the time. If it is correct that there are 3 more governors that the APC is expecting, again, for me, this is like playing the script that we have seen before because PDP, did it. But coming very quickly to the issue of the defecting lawmakers, I think part of what is interesting is how the section of the Constitution that ought to deal with this problem, is everybody's basically glossing over it and not truly putting it up to test. Section 68(1) and G of the Nigerian Constitution, which stipulates, very clearly that if a lawmaker defects or cross carpets, he or she must vacate his seat, except for 2 reasons. One will be if there are internal crises in the party where he or she is coming from, or there is a merger or coalition of some sort. Are those two examples sufficient for the ceaseless, endless defections that we are witnessing? I think the problem will be that nobody has actually gone to court to challenge what is happening. And so why wouldn't you have people just moving en masse to leaving the sinking ship, as the president, calls it, and then if they like, he says that you are free, to abstain from a coalition of confusion, if that's what they want. So 3 more senators and then APC will have an easy run. Will they get it? It looks to me that it is achievable, if that's the target.
They won't be hard. What we're seeing now, do they have any difficulty in the Senate? You have 1 or 2 voices.
Is at play for APC. Bayelsa to an extent, and Osun is already, in. So will that necessarily take Nigeria to a one-party state? I say no, because we were not a one-party state when PDP was enjoying this same game, but then we had a behemoth. The same thing that, that it looks like we're having now.
Well, I think it's also just, aside from the idea of a one-party state, it still just speaks to the amount of power that will exist, especially when it comes to things like constitutional changes. Now, the thing is, I feel like for the longest time, it's very clear that democracy that we talk about is for the Nigerians, but the politicking within politics remains for the politicians. And I think this is one of those times that Nigerians, for lack of a better word, cannot lose guard, especially as we move again towards 2027. Because the question is, what is in the APC that these leaders cannot do in their current political parties? Because if you think about the reasons, oftentimes, aligning with, the central, ensuring that they can get better resources and, they can allocate these resources to their people. And my question is, why can't you do that where you are? Are there issues around that? You spoke about the constitutionality of a defection, something that we haven't seen ever. Like we haven't even seen it challenged at any point in time. It happens from top to bottom. So if it's happening so freely at the presidential or vice presidential level, why would it not easily happen at the Senate level as well? My only thing is, whatever happens to PDP at the end of this whole situation, whenever they do have their meetings or their convention, as we're looking forward to, I believe that's supposed to be in November, if they do eventually begin and they're able to form a very, very strong party system, despite all the challenges that they have, are people now going to start running back, or are they going to stay where they are? I mean, it's really just a very interesting time that we are in right now with our political system, honestly.
It has been challenged in court, remember, with the River State lawmakers, but the Supreme Court refused to rule on that, on the issue, and did say that it was no matter a substantive matter because other things had happened. But our courts... Let's move on to the next story now. The Wall Street Journal on Wednesday reported that U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi told President Donald Trump in May that his name appeared in investigative files related to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The disclosure about Trump's appearance in the Justice Department case records threatened to deepen a political crisis that has engulfed his administration for weeks. Some Trump supporters have for years fanned conspiracy theories about Epstein's clients and the circumstances of his 2019 death in prison. The White House sent mixed signals following the story. It released an initial statement characterizing it as fake news, but a White House official later told Reuters that the administration was not denying that Trump's name appears in some files, noting that Trump was already included in a tranche of materials Bondi assembled in February for conservative influencers. Oh, Trump and Epstein. Trump and Epstein. For me, this is very fascinating because the accusation against Donald Trump, whether it be for sexual assault or for rape, have been very prominent, and it's never really seemed to bother his base. But I think what MAGA is bothered about is that, to be fair to the MAGA base, they don't like the idea of a powerful center of politicians that lie to them. And Trump has always come across as, I'm the one who tell you the truth, I'm straight talking, I wouldn't hide behind with the machinery of Washington. And then when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein, it seems that he threw all of that out the window. And now we have Major Green Taylor who's a congresswoman, and Candace Owens, some very prominent Trump voices and some very prominent conservative voices who are no longer, backing Trump.
Well, I mean, it's expected. We do not know in full detail in what capacity his name was mentioned, and of course we will also wait and see. Which other names are there. Everybody knows that we've seen Trump's picture with Epstein before. We've seen Clinton's pictures with him. We've seen many, many other people. So when the whole, story comes out, I don't think it will be about Trump alone. But to think that, his name will not crop up at some point, I mean, that would be a laugh. I knew that his name would be there in some capacity. But then, to what extent? What about the other people? Clinton, different people who are there. And then it looks to me like it's a big issue because Trump's name is involved. Why wasn't anybody crying about the Epstein files when Biden ruled for 4 years, for example? So it's still part of the American politics, and they'll deal with it, isn't it?
I'm sure they will. I think one thing to point out is the DOJ saying that this release, the fact that, because they've only released like 1% of the entire thing, they say it's such a large file, well over 100,000 pages, so we know about Donald Trump, we know about Bill Clinton, we know about Prince Andrew, but the DOJ is saying that this does not give evidence or amount to evidence of wrongdoing. That's what they're saying at this time, that it's important to point out that there is no comprehensive client list that has been found. And then there's also the issue of public transparency versus victim privacy. Are they doing this to protect the victims in this situation? Or is there an issue about being transparent, like, you rightly just mentioned, because there's so many other people that could be in this, especially because of the nature of how this entire Epstein case has been handled post his death. So there's still a lot of issues around it, and I guess time would just tell. But I feel, to be honest, in situations like this, nothing is ever hidden for too long. Trump is not going to be president forever. So even if we do not get it now, it will come out at some point in time.
Absolutely.